Operation Synindur is a sort of an inflection point for the the domestic arms industry.
Technology has to be developed in-house.
Rising tide raises all boats.
Shifts that we are noticing is something that I believe we have to also wake up to.
The tide is rising, and after this the tide will rise faster, and I think all boats have lots of scope to rise and rise together.
Industry will really be really cutting edge, the products they will be able to make, and then exports they have already started. What is the ecosystem that has been provided by this government?
You are on Bharat Shakti. I am Nitin Gokhale, and this is our occasional roundtable that we do with different specialists in the defense field, those who watch it, those who are users, and those who are also the suppliers or manufacturers and creators of defense platforms and equipments. And I'm privileged to be joined today by three stalwarts, two of them from the industry. One, a disruptor, innovator, known as somebody who backs innovators and the startups in a big way, was a naval officer, now a veteran. So let me introduce them one by one, and joining me in discussing issues about what next for the Indian defense sector post Operation Synindur are my colleagues, Brigadier Chatterjee, who is the editor of Bharat Shakti, Captain D.K. Sharma, naval veteran, Amitabh, my senior colleague from Stat News Global, our sister concern, and to introduce our guest, Arun Ramchandani, head of defense in Larsen & Toubro, Ashok Atluri, chairman and managing director of Zen Technologies, and Arun Golaya, former naval officer, like I said, but now who does multiple things, wears multiple hats, but probably known as a champion of startups and innovators. Thank you all for coming and joining in this important conversation. Let me start with Ashok Atluri. What lessons from Op Sindoor you take as relevant for the Indian industry, and particularly companies like yours, which are purely Indian companies, India-based, India IPs, that kind of companies?
Again, we have always believed that, technology has to be developed in-house and not imported and, try to just make in India, but it should be designed, develop and make in India. And the anti-drone systems that we have supplied were completely indigenously designed. Detector, the jammer, the radar, everything was designed in-house. And so what we have supplied is mostly the soft kill option. I think what we learned in this thing was that, some fears that we had that, the drones will not be commercial drones. Most of the tenders that came was for commercial drones, DJI drones. And we were always saying that, it's not the DJI drone that's going to come, because they don't have to fly in commercial frequencies 2.4 and 5.8. They'll fly in, they're terrorists and, bad government actors. They'll fly in any. So, and lo and behold, that thing came true. And fortunately, the anti-drone system that we supplied could work in a wide band, and they were able to stop it. So that was a good bet that we made. But, another thing which we were also expecting, but we had not really sold to the armed forces, were the hard kill options. We really need to have integrated hard kill options, is what we sell, because the drones, some of the drones are autonomous. They're not following them. There is no ground station and they're coming. So overall, we think that this was a good exercise for us. It definitely gave us a roadmap how we should be going ahead. And we really sincerely hope that the government of India, is really focuses on buying from Indian IP developed sources rather than, buying from somewhere out. Because that would be really a disheartening thing happening. So I think overall lesson is that, this was actually a training exercise for our forces, and we came out with a lot of lessons. And we are trying to, incorporate all the lessons that we have learned into our future products.
Well, that's good to know, because there are also some questions about quality and performance of some of the products, Indian products, which were battle tested. In a way, it's a good thing. Small battles, short and swift battle. But we'll come to that question a little later. But Arun Ramchandani, L&T is been a big player in the defense sector also for a long time, and I think Akash systems have been integrated and manufactured by L&T among others. So apart from Akash worked very well, as we know by now. But what are the takeaways for you from the short, swift Operation Sindoor, which lasted for just 4 days, I think?
So like Ashok said, there are shifts happening in the way combats are taking place. And I think for a company like ours, which has actually focused on building platforms, equipment, solutions, and Akash, for example, is one of them, and these are all solutions either built by our own design and engineering or with DRDO, collaboratively with DRDO. And we actually put in a lot of effort to ensure reliability of these equipment. They're extremely well tested, etc. And that has borne out in the battlefield. That said, the shifts that we are noticing is something that I believe we have to also wake up to. And as a large industry that is focusing on bigger systems, we do realize the value of lower cost assets, high tech, lower cost assets, and their role in this kind of combat situation. And fortunately for us, we have been looking at this for some time, and we've been moving down that road, whether it is autonomous underwater vehicles or whether it is adapting some of our target drones for other applications. So there is a plethora of things that we are looking at. Air defense, for example, is something that we have invested into. We are right now building close-in weapon systems for the Air Force for protecting the valuable assets and points. And I think we need to accelerate some of these. We need to create a shift to looking at some of the newer age technologies. We need to look at creating low-cost assets which can be disruptive. So, and that's something that we will focus more on and look at bringing it to market faster.
Oh, that's, I think you're absolutely right, because the nature of warfare is changing very fast, and there will be new challenges coming forward. So that gives me a cue to ask Arun, what is the future look like? What does the future look like? What is it that you learned or you saw in Operation Sindoor which worked and which didn't work?
So to answer your question slightly indirectly, sir. Okay. Now, I think all of us would agree that Operation Sindoor is a sort of an inflection point as far as, not only this operation per se, which set a new normal, but it is also an inflection point for the the domestic arms industry. What has come out quite clearly, one, of course, as you said, our systems have been battle tested and they have proven their worth. So going forward in the future, I see 2-3 things happening. One is, I think the domestic demand will increase in India. I also see the exports increasing. So that's one thing which would happen, because our systems, the world has taken note that our systems have proven themselves. So that's good news for the industry. The second thing which I think I need to point out, and both the speakers before me, you had a whole range of systems, so to speak. It wasn't one system. So there were small systems, there were big systems, there were innovative things made by startups, and there were also big firms collaborating with DRDO. So I think the other thing which has come out quite clearly is that there is room for everybody, and there's a need for everybody to collaborate. Right. Because normally you tend to see, that DPSUs is one end of the spectrum and DRDOs and startups, it's something like there's no scope for them to collaborate. They are opposite extremes. Yeah. But what has come out quite clearly is that it's a range of systems, starting from the very small innovative systems to the very big, you mentioned the Akash missile. And there is a scope for everybody, and there is a need, not only a scope, there's a need for everybody to collaborate. So I think going forward, I see that happening more.
That's good to know, because the industry, if it has to grow, it must have an ecosystem. I mean, any big, Arun will tell you, or Zen will tell you, that they all depend on smaller players, MSMEs, startups, to give them and do the integration.
And as the naval saying goes, that rising tide raises all boats. So I think the tide is rising. Absolutely. The tide is rising, and after this, the tide will rise faster. And I think all boats have lots of scope to rise and rise together.
Absolutely. So the natural consequence of this is to ask another naval veteran what he thinks.
Today only the Air Chief said that. Today only the Air Chief in a summit said that though the startups are very, very promising, but there has been a case where the end user or the service has signed a contract, but they have failed to deliver. Number two, when we talk of the giants like L&T and DRDO and other people, and the small startups come in, MSMEs come in with some very good innovations, how do you think that we can, reduce the acquisition timings so that they are able to deliver and are not caught in the red tape of, 3 quotations and three things, L1, L2, L3? So we want your
innovation to induction is something which not only in India, and I've been saying this for a long time. Even if you read the articles, various articles which have been coming out about the induction chain in, say, the Pentagon, the technology is changing very fast. If the technology is changing very fast, the procurement procedures, unfortunately, the world over, have not kept up. So it's the procurement rather than the innovation which is a problem. If we fix the procurement, the rest of the things would follow. The venture capitalists would invest, the private firms will invest in R&D, as long as, and I'm not even saying assurance of orders, but a reasonable chance of success if the product delivers. So procurement is something which needs to be fixed, and if we can do that, I think it's more or less known how we can fix procurement.
But then something has to be done to the DPMs and the DPP, which is likely to come up. The new one is coming up. So can you suggest what should be done to curtail this period, and the red tape should be,
So if I can go point,
I think the same question can be asked to other two also, but yeah. But
so let me go point wise from somebody who was a user earlier and before we come to the industry perspective. But first point, if you see the DAP, a number of amendments and very progressive amendments have already been made, especially the ones which came out in April 22, which changed the chapter 3, which is about innovation, IDEX and TDF, has been virtually rewritten, which is why we could take advantage of it, as you're aware, in Sprint, which is nice. But I think what has been left out of that is the bigger systems. We have not really targeted the what we call the make 1, make 2, make 3. They have not seen the kind of success which IDEX saw or IDEX Sprint saw. And IDEX Sprint, we could show those kind of results because of the amendments in the DAP came in. So I think similar amendments would have to be made for bigger systems. It cannot be a case of, and again, this is something which I've been saying for a long time, so people will accuse me that, I'm getting repetitive. But what I've been saying is it can't be L1, it can't be L1 T1 also. In some cases, if it is a really innovative product, it will be the only one. And the firms require support. Bottom line is this, that you fix procurement, the rest would fall in place. And if I can make a quick point about small startups, they're both big firms, but small startups, I think the biggest problem which they have is cash flow. How can we ease the cash flow problem? Maybe by the defense forces should be on treads, so that the trade receivables can be encashed, so to speak. The timelines have to be compressed. The bureaucracy has to be done away with. The red tape has to be done away with. Fixed procurement, innovation will happen, is my view.
Ashok?
So, listen, if you want to win a war, your product has to be the best. There are no runners-up. I'm not saying in a way to buy foreign equipment, but I'm saying in India, the bet should be on technologies that can be dominant in the world, because we have very, very strong adversaries. So if you are saying that I want the best technology, your ecosystem should encourage that in a very, very strong way. And there should be extraordinary examples of success. Now, for many years, till Mr. Parrikar came, there was no question of any innovative technology suffering because the system was anti-innovation. What do I mean by that? I mean that if you were to go with them and say, this is the technology, this is not India first but world first, they'll say, get me 3 vendors.
So that is
Now,
sir, I'm
So the only guy, so I have been talking about this since 2005, that this is anti-innovation. The only person who could get it on the first time, the moment you say is single vendor, people used to drop out of their chair, whether it was a bureaucrat or an army officer. So 2015, when I went and told him that this IDDM, sir, this is the only way to do it, but the only thing is there will be a single vendor and you have to accommodate that in the policy itself. And the DAP 2016, then it used to be called DAP, 2016 introduced IDDM with the single vendor clause. Of course, it has come now. But what we see is even now, the IDDM is not being implemented fully. The army officer, the armed forces are still wary of saying, even if it is world-cutting technology, that's what we have more than 160 patents that we have applied for. 80 have been granted, global and Indian patents. But this is the exact position we are in. Even now they ask, koi aur hota to acha hota. GEM, where all the procurements are happening, you cannot have a single vendor situation. They cannot buy. So if you have world's best technology, you have invested decades and tens of crores, what happens is that you are just still stuck. And as Arun Golaya said, unless there is a faster cycle of procurement, funds come in, we invest in newer technologies, and we become a success. And what do the other guys, they are willing to invest in their success.
I was going a little off this thing. I just want to introduce one more
But
issue.
before that, I think I need Arun to also come in on the question of the procurement cycles.
Yeah. So procurement cycles is a problem, and of course, if you want to look at the root of the problem, I would say it boils down to trust and GFR, which is overriding, and everything has to follow some financial regulation. This is, we are not doing tender procurement for cement and bricks and stuff like that. There has to be so that's at the genesis of it, and I don't know till we can crack that whether this issue will really get resolved. Coming to innovation in procurement or enabling innovation in defense procurement, I agree with both of them that this whole process of looking at innovation as acquisition is something flawed. And we need to look at this whole thing differently. He talked about the failure of the Make One. Now the Make One is really, the Make One and IDDM are two very powerful instruments to bring in Indian products into service. And you look at Make One, okay, the whole idea was that you are able to select 2 development partners, fund them, capable people who can build a system. Government will fund, government says, okay, I'll give you 70%. At one time, in Parikar's time, it was 90%. Okay, but that's not the crux of the thing. The government needs to fund the right people. And then they struggled with that, how do we select 2? Take classic programs like the FICB, which should have been in service today, got stuck because they just didn't know how to shortlist 2. They did 1 round of selection, they got 2, they were worried that the 3rd, 4th, 5th will go to court. They retracted that thing, they reissued it. They again got 2 selected, and then somebody came and said, no, but I can do this for free, I don't need the funding, and the whole thing collapsed. So now the question comes that if we are unable to have a process that can select 2 capable industries, like he said, we are not able to identify people who are investing in R&D. If we are not able to select people on the kind of R&D they are doing and the technology they are bringing, the kind of engineering resource, the infrastructure resource that these guys have, if we are not able to do that, and we even today the DAP says, Make One, they will select, they have a threshold that a very low pass mark. It's like a 35%,
35%.
and every Tom, Dick and Harry makes that pass mark. And then you say, I'll give 30% weightage for your development quote, and 70% weightage for your production quote. Production quote of what? The product is not defined, not designed, and today we are talking about, I'll take 30 into development quote, 70 into production quote. It's opening up the gates for all kinds of
dubious players.
Absolutely. So somewhere we have to say that, but this doesn't work. Do you have credible R&D spending? Do you have patents? Have you worked in this domain? Maybe then, we should look for who is the most likely to make the best use of this 70%. It's not about choosing who wants the least of that 70%, and then that whatever money you give goes down the drain. So really, this needs it's a mindset shift, if you ask me, because we have to go away from that. We are acquiring innovation. It's not an acquisition.
It's a very important distinction that you're making. I need to take a short break because we have lots to discuss. Both my colleagues Amitabh and Brigadier Chatterjee haven't even spoken, but we'll come back in a minute. Don't go away.
Let me talk to you for a minute about Bharat Shakti. This year happens to be Bharat Shakti's 10th year of being in operation. And it's been a long story. It's also been a hugely successful story. This year we'll be doing a whole year of special programs for you. Like we will be interviewing the Director Generals of various arms and services and also functions. So you will find a lot of material that comes your way. We'll go to the training institutions, show how training is done, let's say in the School of Artillery, let's say in the Armored Corps Training Center and School, various other places. Women, we haven't had too many programs about women. So we will have a lot of programs involving women who are officers, women who are army wives, women who are army officers' children. So all kinds of programs you will see this year.
Welcome back. You're on Bharat Shakti Roundtable, and we are in fascinating conversation with three stalwarts of the defense industry, along with my colleagues from the editorial team. So over to Brigadier Chatterjee.
I think I'll change the topic a little bit more and go straight to operations and the way the industry has to really support operations. What I'm talking about is actually the surge capacities that we have to build in. If you don't have the surge capacities, then by and large, wars you can also say will come in unannounced. You look at the example of Gaza, it's unannounced. You look at the example with us, this 3 to 4 days of war, it's unannounced. Ukraine, nobody believed they would attack though they were piling up. NATO countries hardly did anything in preparation for that attack. So it will be unannounced, unexpected. It will happen to you. And that's when we'll require the surge capacities. So should it be a part of the contract that is given out for a warlike equipment that a certain amount of percentage surge should be built into it and be paid for to the to the company where the order ultimately goes?
Do you think that is possible? Surge capacity to be built in the contract?
This is something that I have thought over, and I really think that the capacity that should be there, especially with related to expendables, is a capacity that should be able to serve the country when a full-fledged war, multi-front war is going on. As the consumption is happening, the industry should have the capacity to replenish it at least. That is the minimum thing given. And so that is a very high capacity, and the government should, as Brigadier Chatterjee has said, they should be investing with the industry, saying listen, your regular capacity will be only 30-40%, but you need to have for a surge requirement of 100%, and here is the money we are willing to give for that. And absolutely, I completely agree with that, and we have to do that. And of course, capital procurement also has to be finished. So as far as the Indian industry is able to provide, especially IDDM cases, I know what is holding them back. And again, one point I want to make again and again is this R&D is a thing that has to be in the DNA. A trader wants to do R&D taking fund, they just cannot do. The outsources are not doing. And you have already identified some extraordinary companies that are doing R&D. They have created extraordinary IP, but still you are not giving them orders, and they are not able to do R&D. But if you had we been giving them orders today, I think we can. The war which happened between India and China and Turkey, we would have been. We would have really gone extraordinarily above and war. We did an extraordinary job. But still, this is what is going to happen in future. We are going to fight multi-front, China, Turkey, Pakistan as their vassal state, and everything is going to happen.
Yeah, that's going to be a bigger challenge coming. So Arun, what do you think of this idea?
So, I think we need to distinguish between capital procurement and expendables and revenue procurement. As far as capital procurement is concerned, I think you need better planning. And, I feel we are conservative in the way we budget for capital goods. I mean, we can talk about budgetary constraints and all that, but a lot of the procurement happens in small slices, and you really have to show the industry the entire roadmap that, boss, I am going to get 500 light tanks, and it's not going to be first like 1 regiment, then 4 regiments, then 6 regiments. You guys who are building it, you need to scale up for this, and within the cycle of one delivery, you can order over spread out the order, but the visibility of the product, the production line capacities need to be defined, and somebody has to tell me that you need to have the capacity to produce 100 guns a year or 200 guns a year, and it's a different ball game if I'm setting up capacity for 50 and 200. And maybe this is a little expensive, but if we see that that is what is required, it can be done. The second thing on capital procurement is looking at modularity of industry. So, if we have a good tierized system of industry, then there is that famous book on a stable
Freedom's Forge.
Freedom Forge, which talks about how America kind of harnessed its industrial capacity during World War II. And if you look at it, the Indian MSME sector is quite a vibrant sector with a lot of federated capacity. And probably if you can stitch that up, if you can, when the peak comes, you're able to push the load there, you're able to support these guys to be adaptable. So our whole thinking from an industrial perspective, and that's why acquisition is really not a part-time game. It needs professionals who understand what are supply chains, what is the ecosystem, and we need to support that ecosystem that, look, if I need to boost capacity, here are
XYZ.
Yeah, maybe a refrigerator maker who can make electronic cabinets if you need them, So that's one other aspect which requires deeper planning, because finally if you leave it to industry that, boss, you build surge capacity and we will order at the RMS value of the peak, then it's not going to be viable. And finally, who's going to pay for all that? Beyond the point, it's not viable. For stuff like ammunition and expendables, I think creating a larger industrial base, like I said, Ropen, when the chips are down, you need a lot of forged steel to come out to create shells. And maybe there are small forge shops all over the country. Yeah. So we need to harness that. There are small electronic shops here and there. We can get them, they can put together stuff that can be done. So we can upgrade the industry. We can look at that. We can look at harnessing. And of course, like both of you are suggesting, that the government also has to cater for some excess capacity and probably fund it.
Fund it in that. But Amitabh, you wanted.
I know it's a larger question, maybe a longer time frame, but since you're talking about the interface between private sector, the GPSUs and the armed forces, the users itself, just your quick thoughts on AMPA and the execution model that has been laid out by the Raksha Mantri. I know we need other players also to talk about it, but...
Sure. AMCA. Yesterday, RM has said, I think...
So maybe I can help a little bit on that.
Yeah, they are very much there.
So we are in the newspapers. I don't know if we are in AMCA or not.
That's a good
They are two different things. But that said, you know, there is this whole thing that fighter aircrafts can be built only in HAL, and there is, you know, a complete monolith that has been created. HAL, of course, has tried to flow down and create a tiered ecosystem, which I dare say is not very successfully implemented, in the sense that you know, at that level probably you just need an integrator, and you need many more people involved in building aircraft subsystems, and so then we would have had a larger ecosystem, which I think doesn't exist. So today, when we are talking about the AMCA, the government is saying that look, private players can compete, and you know, ADA will develop the AMCA, and they will develop it with development partners who you know, will be stakeholders into the whole process. Now, how this will work? Number one, for people like us who, if we have to compete with HAL to you know, start building aircrafts, the entire cost of the infrastructure, the resources that we have to invest in, there is a huge gap, you know, sure. And we would certainly be handicapped.
They start with an advantage, HAL.
Yes. So it's something we faced in shipbuilding also, but
yes.
For a moment let me focus on his question. That so this gap does exist, and how do we compete? I think it's a positive step that the government has said. At one time they said, you know, we will form an SPV with HAL as a major part of it, and other industries can participate. HAL got out an EOI where they said that, you know, we will take industry partners. Each of you bring in, we will hold 50%, and each of you bring in 12.5% equity, and we'll give you some, you know, we'll give you some airframe work, and we'll give. So we bring in 12.5% equity, we do 2% work share. So
that was not a feasible model.
It is not a feasible model. So how this handicap will be dealt with, whether you know, a consortium, a national consortium approach is a better way, I think these questions are still up in the air. What we can say is a positive is that today at least we are being allowed to compete, and they're not saying that it is HAL plus.
Yeah,
we
so
are saying, okay, Tata, L&T, you know,
others
if you guys
can come
want
in,
to
yeah.
come and you want to participate, you could pitch in. And now it's up to us to think about how are we going to do it, how will we make it viable, what is the kind of business model, what are the kind of investments involved. So, and you know, it's end of the day, it's a development program.
right.
So on the one hand, even today I heard the chief saying that, look, our ecosystem is just not geared up to deliver on time. And our whole development cycles do stretch. So, I mean, as a business house, we would have to think as to how all of this can be made.
But you are
viable.
interested, definitely.
We are looking at it. Now, there are many questions and clouds in the mind that...
Are these doubts coming because of the SP model which we followed during making of submarines, which has not happened?
So that's a different story altogether. So
No, but they seem to be the same models.
Okay, so here's the challenge, that the SP model was also thought of. Again, I think it was a brainchild of Parikar's, and he was one guy who really wanted to bring mindset shifts in the entire procurement process. So the SP model idea was that, okay, we have submarine yards in the public sector, we have an HAL to build aircraft, you know, we have the AVNLs and the ordnance factory to build battle tanks, but we need to bring in a strategic partner, because all of these are not the typical viable business models. These have cycles they have high investment and they have cycles of ordering. So therefore, it has to be that, okay, you are a strategic partner, every time there is a new submarine program, if I have to become L1 against some new guy who shows up on the door, I can't invest in infrastructure and build 4 submarines over 20 years and say that, it's something viable that I can do. I have to build engineering resource, I have to build yard resources, I have to build ecosystems to support this kind of a thing. And the strategic partnership model, the whole idea was to enable private sector champions to come and be one more option to what you have available in the public sector.
So that brings me, and both Arun and Ashok can actually answer this. Is there a case going forward that government must choose, say, 4 or 5 big industries, make them champions or choose them as champions and give them a supporting, enabling environment, and also have some of the smaller players, innovators and MSMEs supporting them for particular products or particular segment, let's say? Is there a way to do it like what he spoke about, that Freedom's Forge, something like that?
I think, for almost 20 years, no rocket flew in America also. Sure. And why didn't it fly? The 2 primes were Lockheed Martin and Boeing, and they were following something called the cost-plus model. That means to say that they were being financed as long as the rockets would fly. The moment they would fly, the project would end. Sure. So they were never ending it, extending it, and cost-plus model was going on. When did they start to fly? Elon Musk said, listen, pay me only if my rocket flies, otherwise don't pay me anything. Now that's the ultimate skin in the game statement, where he says, and he's willing to invest upfront, but the trust in the government should be there that if it flies, they will actually pay the money. Right. So there are players who are willing to really put in big money. I mean, I think L&T and all those, if they are guaranteed that, that when it flies, we will pay you the money, there is no holding back at that point in time. So I think the skin in the game concept happens when the entrepreneurial spirit is there, and there are a lot of guys who are willing to. Actually, you don't need a lot of money to do it. If you have the vision, people will fund you for that, provided the funders have the trust in the government. Sure. So this is the whole cycle.
I think that is the change.
And I'm not talking about small, not tanks or something. I'm talking about rockets. And this guy is so successful. Again, because he was having skin in the game, the government said, okay, fine, fly it and show it, because they didn't believe it, but he flew and he's getting the money now. So I think that's the way to do it. And I'm definitely sure that, they have to identify capable companies, as you are saying, who are willing to deliver. But again, I am a complete believer that, why the PSUs are failing is because the skin in the game is less in their case. Private companies succeed because skin in the game is high in that.
Right, absolutely.
That's my view.
Arun, your view?
Sir, difficult question to answer. I agree to a very large extent with what you said. It's very difficult to disagree with somebody who's named Arun. But no, jokes apart, you mentioned skin in the game, and you mentioned, now my view would be, and I'm not sure if you agree, my view would be that especially when it comes to the larger things, you've said what Elon Musk has shown. So it comes back to the same thing, that procurement is the key. But having said that, if you're talking about, you mentioned the submarines. Now, building the capability or a dry dock or, the entire gamut of things which will be required for an aircraft, I would say whether in the public or in the private sector, that has to be treated like a national asset. It is a national asset. If you have a submarine building, the assembly line is there, it is a national asset, whether it is with the private sector or with the public sector. Now, the disadvantage is in the public sector, it's funded by the government. In the private sector, it is obviously not funded by the government, and even if you say that identify a few champions, they will always, that thing will be a non-starter, because most of the things which we are discussing were very good ideas. They were non-starters because any private sector you fund, there would be allegations of favoritism. So if that be the case, and if you still have to see it as a national asset, we have to try and figure out that what is the via media by which we can do it. I don't know, I'm thinking through my hat, but one possibility could be that the government either creates the infrastructure and then it is that the private sector is allowed to use it. And the infrastructure is funded by the government. That may be one option. I'm not really sure if it will work. So somebody will have to think through, if we are agreeing that the infrastructure itself is expensive and money is not limitless, then it does not make sense, even if you're talking about two people, two champions or three champions, it does not make sense to replicate it at three places when finally one of them is going to get orders. So that is something which I think we need to think through.
Strategic partnership model, that was the thing which was taken into consideration, and it was decided that for aerospace there will be one or two champions. For naval systems, there will be one or two champions.
Agreed, sir, but it didn't work.
Like
The reason why it didn't work is because if you say that for submarines, for example, or for aviation, I identify 1 and 2 as champions, the remaining 2 will say, why not us?
Exactly.
And then there would be allegations which nobody wants to get into.
But don't you think that the course correction can still be done because the submarines are still a work in progress?
It has
and
to.
AMCA has just been announced.
It has to be done, sir, but we would have to take, the government would have to take a very hard decision on, do we see the infrastructure as a national asset? Even if it is a part of the private sector, if it is a national asset, then it has to be funded nationally.
It's a good food for thought. Good food for thought. What Amitabh, anything else? That you
Just on Atmanirbharta, like and you talked about from design to deployment, it's all made in India. We understand that overall, but in situations like this, which are such swift wars, and you need equipment to come in or platforms to come in, what about the subsystems in these platforms? Are they all also available that within India, or do you have to rely on people outside, especially in?
You know, I'm very sure that for something we have to rely overseas. You know, in fact, chips are there. You know, we don't make chips inside, but there's some efforts being made. So my point here is that please go with companies that have the IP mindset to absorb the IP and evolve the next product. At least do that due diligence. But what is happening is we are getting people who are just getting the blueprint, and you know, we are becoming manufacturing coolies here and manufacturing. Next time we want the evolved product, we go again and with a begging bowl and ask for the next thing. That is not acceptable. At least there should be some DNA in these guys that they can do their R&D, they can do, and there should be some track record. So, you know, without any track record, what you are doing is, so if you hurry up and buy now, what are you going to do? Every time I want to kill the Indian project, I have to do a border problem for you. So you are actually handing over to the adversaries something in a plate, saying if you want to kill Indian IP, Indian R&D, just to create some broader problem. So if you at this time after post Operation Synindur, if you don't support the Indian industry, the message will be very clear that the government is not committed. So they have to double down on the Indian R&D companies and say, okay, guys, here is extraordinary money, build more and more, and and ensure that they get the business, not foreign companies.
So that EP model doesn't work. Emergency procurements, there have been 5 or 6 iterations of that. That is also this band-aid kind of a thing that you suddenly want it immediately, and it doesn't get delivered. Like the Air Chief has just said today again in the CII summit that we knew when we signed some contracts that some of the deliveries will not happen or on time. That is the thing that they have to balance, and like you said, it has to be a long-drawn process. It has to be a well-thought-out structure going forward.
But again, in EP also, there were IDDM categorization,
right,
where they said, okay, only Indian IP companies should come. So that's a big deal. I mean, if you can do that, even in IP, there was encouragement.
Absolutely.
I'm not against EP as such. I would say EPs are good, provided you can accommodate especially the IDDM category.
Exactly.
And they will deliver, and all that money is going into R&D again.
So shall we on this topic, sir, EP, let's remove the word emergency.
Correct.
Let's call it, okay, fast track procedures or whatever. And if it is something which has proven to be effective,
Yes.
if the armed forces are happy, the user is getting the things, a few failures will always be there. But overall the system has worked in the sense that you've been able to induct in 1/10 of the time.
Right.
So up to delegated financial powers, shouldn't that, instead of calling it emergency procurement, shouldn't it be the normal procurement henceforth? Absolutely. That if, as long as it's an Indian firm, as long as it's within delegated financial powers, as long as the service is wanted, the procedure, the norm should be fast track procedures akin to emergency procurement, and let's not call it emergency. That is
So
the new norm.
two years ago, I had asked the vice chiefs of all the 3 services in a session in our defense conclave exactly the same thing. That can we not adopt this emergency procurement procedures to get into a regular capital procurement, fast track procurement, up to a certain limit
Up to the
of
delegated financial pass.
financial pass. They said yes, it is very good, but it never went forward from that. This is 2023 or 22, I think I had asked this question. But anyway, Brigadier Chatterjee had a point.
No, and a small point. We were all talking about technology just before this. So my point is the responsibility that technology has to be developed by everybody. To what extent is it there in the industry? And if we are asking the government for a lot of money to be invested into the technology area, are we also pushing in our money into developing technology for ourselves, whichever be the company that you are representing?
I would say yes. We realize the importance of putting in money into R&D, and we are doing that irrespective of how the government is supporting it or incentivizing it. So it's something that we are increasingly spending more and more on R&D. We realize the necessity of building our own products, developing our own products. So that's something which is happening anyway, and I'm always looking at opportunities where I can find money to fund internal R&D and looking for programs where we think the chance of success is high. The big barrier is this issue about chance of success and time of success, which becomes a kind of impediment to because you go on plowing in money and then you don't see returns, that is the challenge. So yes, we are doing it. Can it be incentivized? Can it be linked to success? Can there be schemes which drive people to invest more? I think a lot of innovation can be done there, from tax benefits to other things which might enable, the fact that I'm putting in R&D money to develop a product, if the government gives me a tax incentive for that, it becomes that much cheaper for me to spend that money. And yeah, so probably if we need some things that can propel this into a kind of virtuous cycle, we must look at such enablers. Is it incumbent on industry to look at scaling up its R&D? I think the answer is yes. And like he said, we have to take a few calls that whatever be the outcome, we must try and get products out and find ways to push it into the acquisition process. So that's a mindset which we are trying to
Absolutely. No, I agree. Before I ask Ashok to give his thoughts, I need to take a short break, very short break. Don't go away. We'll come back soon.
हमने आतंकवादियों को मिट्टी में मिलाने के लिए भारत की सेनाओं को पूरी छूट दी। जब सिंदूर बारूद बन जाता है तो नतीजा क्या होता है?
So Ashok, since this was partly answered by Arun on the industry's R&D, and I know your company you've been pushing for this. What kind of incentivization can happen from the government apart from tax breaks? Maybe even say that okay, this product gets a weightage. I don't know. I mean, I'm just
government used to give 200%, almost 100% extra break they used to give.
Okay.
So that was a way of encouragement in the sense that you are spending 10 crores, you would get a 20 crore break kind of thing. But very frankly, I think it is a genetic DNA thing. How much did now it is zero, there is no R&D incentive. So how much expenditure did we reduce after that? Zero. There was no impact on us. In the sense, and I know a friend who said, Ashok, अब तो हमने R&D बंद कर दिया है क्योंकि government encourage ही नहीं कर रही. So that is the different thought set. And I think he was just putting in some money in the R&D to take the tax break. He wasn't doing any R&D.
Okay.
So so my thing would be that you should do R&D, but again, as he says, everything comes to procurement, Nitin.
Sure.
If you buy R&D done products, and for example, when armed force said IDDM and EP for an anti-drone system, the 12 people came for the pre-bid meeting, and they said, yes, we are IDDM. They said, and then they said, how are you going to verify? They said, we are going to check the source code and all that, but still 6 people bid, and then they very clearly said, how are you going to verify? They said, we are going to check your software. We are run through the software code. We will ask what is what. We will ask you to compile in front of us, run it, and then we will ask you to make changes to the code and then run it and show certain characters. Second, we will go through all your electronic Gerber files. We will see your PCB designs, how did you design it. Third, we will go through your CAD files and exploded SolidWorks views, and then we will be convinced, and then we'll allow you to participate in the trial. The moment they said, only 2 people came for the trial, Bell and Zen. And of course, because the specs have changed dramatically, we were the only resultant single vendor in that. So, so the encouragement in terms of R&D incentive is, I think, is secondary. But please give these orders. Again, the moment the money came, what are we doing? We are trying to build the world's
Next
most
level.
leading ADS. So anti-drone system. So, I think this can be done. IDDM can be done in a big way. R&D companies can be rewarded, and if that is done, I think we are there, almost there.
So I'm on my last phase of the discussion here. Everybody has to go for some other appointment or something. Before I do that, just quick questions if anybody has to both of them. On 3 of
I
them.
have a small question actually primarily to you, Ashok. I just want to know what is the status of simulator for helicopters. I believe there's a huge shortage in the country as far as helicopter simulators are concerned.
So we have actually developed a helicopter simulator. We have demonstrated, in fact, we demonstrated something in a containerized helicopter simulator. But we never got any encouraging signs from the government. But the point is that for everything that you need for the helicopter simulator are already there, resident in Zen Technologies. The IP for the motion platform, everything is there, the graphics are there. So we can easily realize the product if there is the indication from the government that they need the helicopter simulator.
But you've got a huge civil market also for the simulators, I'm sure. There are lots of helicopters playing around all over the country.
So one thing as a businessman I know is that you should be careful who your customer is. If you try to do too many things, you may fail. So, we have been very, very clear that our market is the armed forces. We really have not gone to the civilian market. And thankfully, we have survived till now.
Sir, there were news reports that the Agniveers have done a tremendous job. And we know it, Agniveers were just inducted and 3,000 of them were there on the front. So, what is your, reading? Were they the simulators behind them or something else?
There was a extreme surge of demand for the Agniveer training from us. We have supplied it to them. They have trained on them. And we know that people who are trained on simulator are extraordinarily more efficient than people who are conventionally trained. So I really can't quantify that, but we are very sure the confidence level of Agniveers would be way, way beyond a normal, normally trained people's confidence.
And again, when we talk about integration, we saw how it was so effective and successful in this 4-day or 58-hour war that it was. Is there, on 2 levels, is there or should there be integration in terms of platform integrations that are provided, or training that you were talking about, Agniveer, training the 3 services in an integrated manner, not for a platform that is given individually? Is that making?
Because you've handled, you've done Akash and then Well has done Akashteer, maybe, and also several counter UAV systems.
No, so if you mean that integration of equipment across services, yeah, then obviously it looks like that is the right way to go, and we really need to look at how we, because again of the changing nature of the warfare, the entire shift towards uncrewed systems, all of that, I think it needs to be integrated. The entire air defense echelons need to be integrated, and I think that's the way it is going.
That's the job of the CDS. So it's
That's
not
the job of the CDS, actually, the Army more to integrate the training on the same standards. But talking about, you're talking about going to, whether it should go in the institutions, how is it being handled? I happen to be fortunate enough to have gone to three training institutions recently. Armored Corps Entrance School, Make Infantry Center, and also the School of Artillery. The utilization of simulators is one hell of a lot as compared to whatever I've seen in my previous video.
Arun, you have any thoughts on this? What should be done?
I agree, sir. Integration, of course, is the way forward, but the only caveat here would be that we should not integrate, or we should not go for jointness sake. This thing has to be very, very clear that where we need integration, where there is a scope, and we will improve the efficiency by jointness. Right. There would be some things, because service-specific competence or capability is also important. Right. So recognizing that, let's not force jointness, because it's a so we have to very intelligently, and as he mentioned, that's something which I'm sure the CDS and his staff is deliberating. But that is why we've not gone in for it's not a knee-jerk reaction. No. We've been deliberating now for some years, so I'm sure a considered decision would be taken that where all we need to integrate, how much we need to integrate, and where integration actually can be counterproductive. Sure. There would be some cases where you are integrating for the sake of integration, jointness for the sake of. So stupid example, if I can give about this, is that when we were growing up, there were only two cars, the Ambassador and the Premier Padmini. So from the logistics perspective, it was great. There was commonality. Absolutely. But were people happy, or people said people wanted more? Now there would be a different requirement. A different user will want a different thing. Similarly, every service, you cannot say that one size fits all approach.
Never.
Even on a ship, in the bridge, there would be 3 or 4 different kinds of GIS system. There would be an EGDIS, there would be one for the basic visualization. There would be different requirements even within a ship. Yeah. So saying that we should have one thing common across the services will not always work. So the only caveat is there. We need integration, yes. We need jointness, yes. But it has to be well thought through. And as was you brought out, sir, I'm sure people are there who are thinking about it.
They're already working on this. But my final thoughts from two of you as industry people, stalwarts. How bullish are you on the Indian defense sector?
No, we
internally and externally.
Both.
Exports as well.
Exports as well.
Okay. So let me first say internally, and I would say we are very positive on the sector. We've been through the entire ride. It's been a rough ride, but the trend has always been positive. The policy shifts have been enabling. The kind of bets that we took have paid off, and we see no reason why there should be any shift from that trajectory. The focus on Indian-built equipment is clearly there. What Ashok also talked about, the way today people are defining IDDM is a big evolution from where what we thought was design ownership, where you change the cover of a comic book and said this is my book. And I think we approach the industry from that perspective, that we need to build products and we need to build capabilities, and we've invested into that, and I think it will pay dividends, and I'm positive. Coming to exports, yes, when we have products and more of our products, it's that much easier to export. It's more markets are accessible and all of that. But to my mind, defense exports is a little complex game. There's many more dimensions to it than just the product. And
geopolitics also comes into
much, it. And then maybe there are smarter guys, who seem to be better at that art. But I'm just saying that yes, I do see that tomorrow India will start exporting platforms, etc., which will scale up. Today we are doing smaller systems, we are doing jackets and vests and stuff like that. maybe some ammunition stuff. So, as you sell bigger systems, it will scale up. But it's a very complex market, it's a fragmented market,
You are a realist, I must say.
So, I would say that yes, you have products, your chances are better. How much that will explode, which markets will, and it's a highly protected market also. Sure. So it's not that any country, they put all their conditions like the way we do. So we will have to see.
It's a mixed bag there as far as exports are concerned.
As far as the Indian market, yes.
Ashok?
So I think, one thing I have to say is that the last 10 years have been exploding growth for us, And again, just to say our growth, I mean, we are not into tens of thousands of crores like them, but we were doing 60, we are the pure defense play, 22 we were doing 60 crores and 23 we did 160 crores. There was a good growth, and 24 we did about 430 crores. This year we closed at 970 crores. So our growth has been phenomenal, and whatever the policies they are working, and we have not even fulfilled 5% of the demand what the government has now. So there is a long way to go for domestic market. If they get the procurement in place, I think Indian industry will really be really cutting edge the products they will be able to make. And then exports, they have already started. What is the ecosystem that has been provided by this government? Earlier, if you used to go for a defense export, we were untouchables at that point in time. So now it's almost become a part of their KPI.
So in fact, it's a mandate now for the defense attaches from India.
Exactly. So you go, they welcome you, they ask you, how are you doing, what support you want. The defense attaches have a mandate to do this. So things are happening. And earlier we used to do, put a road or set up a school kind of thing. But school, the diwar kharab ho gaya, road had a pothole. They would complain about it. But now the government probably is already thinking that if we set up something like a combat training center that will last for 25 years, giving the thing, that's a strategic tie-up also between us, our country and their country, and that yields a lot of long-term benefits also. So I think export is something that is happening at this point in time. 33% of our turnover was export this year. So we expect that Indian industry is going to flourish from now onwards in a big way.
So that's a very good point at which to end this fascinating conversation. We can go on for a full day and it will not end. But I must thank all three of you, our guests and my colleagues from the organization for getting this discussion to a different level post Operation Synindur, because there are several lessons from there, and I'm sure like everybody has said, we are poised for a far better future. And if you have your own systems, strategic autonomy is automatically built in there. I think that's the point of this entire discussion. So thanks for watching. Do keep watching Bharat Shakti, and of course send us feedback. We will bring to you such interesting and knowledgeable guests whenever we have this opportunity. Thanks for watching. Goodbye for now.